Chapter 8. A slightly embarrassing little scene next took place in that breakfast room in Lennox Street, Chelsea. Rook had put down the timetable, and Molly Esdale's face wore an expression of exasperation. It appeared that Philip wanted to pack his family off according to program but wished to remain behind himself. For this he gave no reason, or rather he gave several reasons, all of the thinnest description. But how tiresome. Broke from Molly. Why on earth do you want to upset everything like this? Philip muttered something about the newly arrived pictures needing a thorough overhauling. And the children all ready, all but their hats. Molly exclaimed. Better hurry them up. At least 7 of them are to frame too. Then there's Monty and Audrey, what about them? When you offer people a house, but at this one of Mrs. Cunningham's slender hands was imploringly raised. Her small mouth was parted in appeal. Oh, please. Don't think of that. I should be miserable if I thought that was going to make any difference. But of course it makes a difference. Molly declared. All your things will be coming here, all your things for the wedding, and anyway you won't want Philip hanging about the place. Better never have offered the house at all. Oh, for a day or two, I shan't be in the way, said Philip uneasily. But it was awkward for all that. If Esdale had offered his house to one of his more prosperous friends, he would not have hesitated to say frankly that he was sorry, but something unforeseen had happened, and the hospitality must be considered off. But this was different. It was known that these two were the reverse of well off. Monty, as a matter of fact, had already given up his rooms in Jubilee Place, and I had gathered at breakfast that Mrs. Cunningham only intended to occupy her bed-sitting room in Oakley Street for a very few days longer. There was her story, too, which I shall come to presently. Philip's decision certainly upset a number of minor arrangements. Oh, it's too ridiculous. Molly declared again with vexation. If it means that the wedding's to be put off, I don't feel like going away at all. But Philip only continued to mumble soothingly that it would be quite all right, and it wasn't for long, and nobody had said anything about putting off the wedding. The situation looked rather like a deadlock, and Mackwith already had his silk hat in his hand and the commander's white-topped cap was tucked under his upper arm. Whether Philip went or stayed was a private family matter after all. But as we were on the point of taking our leave, yet another significant little trifle was added to all the rest. And again Monty Rook provided the occasion. Monty, I ought to say, is one of these fellows who, whenever any odd job is to do, especially a domestic one, instinctively seems to take it upon himself. I dare say his living in rooms and studios hardly big enough to turn around and has made him methodical in his habits. It was Monty, for example, who had looked out the train in the timetable. It was Monty who had picked up the jar of curacao when Esdale had let it fall to the floor, and it was Monty who, just as the rest of us were leaving, wandered off towards the studio, presently returned again, sought the kitchen, and reappeared with a sweeping brush. What are you going to do with that? Philip asked, seeing him making for the studio again. I thought I'd just sweep up that broken glass. Monty replied. Better leave it, Philip answered. Monty carried the brush back to the kitchen again and presently wandered off to the studio once more. Esdale must have had eyes in the back of his head, for I, who was facing the studio, had not seen Monty preparing to draw back the roof blinds again. I wouldn't bother about that just at present, Esdale called rather loudly. Just see if there's a train about tea time, do you mind? Monty, once more returning, took up the timetable again. Philip walked with us to the door. Then another little exclamation broke from him. Monty had put down the timetable and had asked him for the cellar key. What on earth do you want the cellar key for? Philip demanded. To put this jar of stuff back, Monty replied. It won't be wanted now. Hereupon Philip broke out with a petulance that struck me as entirely disproportionate, if indeed there had been any occasion for petulance at all. Oh, we can do that any time. We've got all the rest of the day to ourselves, haven't we? Sit down and smoke a cigarette or something, you've done about enough for one morning. It was then that we left.